We were not notified of President Yoon's announcement in advance, but our commitment to the Republic of Korea and our alliance continues to be strong and ironclad. And as I said, they continue to be a vital partner in the Indo-Pacific. And we are watching the recent developments in the ROK with grave concern. We are seeking to engage with our Republic of Korea counterparts at every level, both here in the United States and in Seoul. The Secretary has been briefed, and we're keeping him appraised of the developments, as well as monitoring closely what's happening on the ground. Let me also just mention that our alliance with the Republic of Korea is ironclad, and we're fully committed to that. And ultimately here, our hope is, and every hope and expectation is, that any political disputes will be resolved peacefully and in accordance with the rule of law.
Okay. The grave concern and the rule of law, is it the perspective of the United States that President Yoon has been following that?
So, look, this is an incredibly fluid situation. I'm not going to jump to any immediate conclusions at this point. What I can say is that we are watching these developments with grave concern. We're staying in close, appropriate touch with our ROK counterparts, and I'm sure we'll have more to say as the situation continues to unfold. I just don't want to get ahead of that.
Well, so the rule of law, the National Assembly has voted now.
Certainly.
To undo this,
right,
to rescind martial law. So from the perspective of the United States, should that stand? Should the martial law be rescinded?
So, look, every country, of course, has its own rules and laws and procedures. I'm certainly no expert in South Korean law, and certainly how the South Korean legislature works and what the ins and outs are of that. But certainly, it is our hope and expectation that the laws and regulations of a particular country are abided by that particular country.
Does that include the National Assembly vote?
That would be the case as well. But again, I'm just not going to get ahead of the process here.
Just to put a fun point.
Yeah.
So it's the National Assembly vote. So basically you think that the National Assembly voted martial law should be finished. The United States respects that decision by the National Assembly.
Sean, I'm not going to... There is obviously a lot happening in South Korea over the course of the day. Ultimately, for us, as I said, we want to see these political disputes resolved peacefully and in accordance with the rule of law. And, of course, such a vote in the legislature would be consistent with that approach. But we're continuing to remain in close touch with our ROK counterparts, and I'm sure we'll read out any conversations that may or may not take place over the coming days.
Just a couple more things. Has there been any conversations directly with President Yoon, not necessarily from the Secretary, but with President Yoon?
I have no conversations to read out with President Yoon. We are continuing to seek to engage our ROK counterparts, but I don't have any calls to read out.
And maybe taking a step back, President Yoon was invited to a state dinner last year. In March, he hosted the Democracy Summit, which of course is a signature issue for the outgoing president, for President Biden.
Yeah.
Were there concerns voiced in the past, or does this take the U.S. completely by surprise, or were there concerns voiced in the past about?
Sean, I'm certainly going to keep private diplomatic conversations as that. I'll keep them private. I think what I can say is that we were not notified of President Yoon's announcement in advance. But beyond that, I think the important thing to remember, Sean, is that ultimately at the crux of this is not, President Biden, President Yoon, these two specific governments. What this is about is the broader strategic relationship and the broader strategic partnership that we have with the Republic of Korea. And that alliance, as I said, is ironclad. There continues to be, in our point of view, a lot of important work that we want to continue to do with the Republic of Korea. This incident, of course, as I said, we are continuing to watch with grave concern, and we will continue to follow developments on the ground very closely. But our commitment to the Republic of Korea and our alliance continues to be strong and ironclad. And as I said, they continue to be a vital partner in the Indo-Pacific. And I'm just not going to get ahead of this.
Sure. Just one final one.
Yeah.
But the To put a point on that, I mean, the National Assembly vote. I mean, do you want President Yoon to respect that? Do you want the military to respect that?
As you heard me say, Sean, that we want this to be resolved peacefully in accordance with the rule of law, and certainly the legislature voting to pass something would be consistent with the law of that country. Certainly. Daphne, go ahead.
You mentioned several times conversations that are taking place. Can you give any more detail on who's having those conversations?
I don't. I'm not in a place to get more specific beyond that, beyond just saying we're continuing to seek to engage our counterparts both here in the United States, but also in Seoul. And should we have any calls or meetings to read out, we'll certainly do that.
Do you expect the secretary to have any calls?
I have nothing to preview right now, but as I said, the secretary has been briefed on this, as has been others on our team, and we're continuing to pay attention and monitor the situation closely.
And what's the message been from the administration in these calls?
Again, I'm gonna keep private diplomatic conversations private. As you just heard me say to Sean's question, we're watching these recent developments. We're watching them with grave concern, and we're seeking to engage our counterparts in the ROK.
The U.S. ambassador to South Korea put out a statement on X encouraging American citizens in South Korea to monitor local news sources. And that's been, as far as I can tell, the only kind of security alert that's gone out to U.S. citizens. And that came several hours after martial law was declared in the country. Was there a reason for that delay? Is more guidance coming?
Well, this is, Shannon, as you know, an incredibly fluid situation. And let me just say broadly that we have no higher priority than the safety and security of our citizens, especially those that are overseas. I don't have any updates on the travel advisory or anything like that to offer from up here. The travel advisory warning for the ROK continues to be a level 1, which is exercise normal caution. But that being said, the ambassador is absolutely right, and that we would encourage American citizens to enroll in Smart Traveler. That is the best way to stay in touch with the embassy and to stay in touch with the department as the situation develops, and that's the best way to stay up to date on additional information. We also have a 24/7 hotline for U.S. citizens to use in emergencies, in which they can get in touch with our embassy in Seoul. We plan to issue regular updates on the situation via the embassy website, and as the ambassador said, we encourage citizens to monitor not just these channels that I mentioned, but updates from local law enforcement and otherwise, and we'll, of course, update our citizens appropriately.
And taking out the events, would you typically expect to be notified that an ally as close as South Korea was going to declare martial law ahead of time?
So I'm just not going to speculate on what should or may not happen in these kinds of situations. What I can just say is that in as it relates to this incident, we were not notified of President Yoon's announcement in advance.
Is to draw a parallel to Kenya, another government where the leader was honored with a state visit by the Biden administration, and then later saw some allegations of Democratic backsliding over the summer. In the State Department's engagements with Kenyan leaders at the time, the State Department said it was encouraging them to honor all constitutional rights, including the right to peaceful assembly. In your conversations with South Korean counterparts, are you reminding them of the right for its citizens to peacefully assemble or other similar human rights?
Certainly that would be a message that we carry with any government in which we have a bilateral relationship. Of course, that would be also true in our engagements with a partner like the Republic of Korea. And as I said to Sean, I'm not going to read out private diplomatic conversations, but we are reiterating again that it is our hope and our expectation that any political dispute be resolved peacefully and in accordance with the rule of law. Sorry, Nikki, my bad. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. So has the United States received specific threats from North Korea in the past 24 hours or in the past few days?
I have no threat assessments analysis to offer as it relates to the DPRK in the context of this.
So does the U.S., how does U.S. assess this unsurprised declaration? Is that mainly focused on domestic?
I don't have an assessment to make, Nike, and as I said to Sean, we are watching these developments. We're watching them with concern. We're seeking to engage our counterparts with the ROK, both here in the United States as well as Seoul. We are also undertaking a number of steps, as I laid out to Shannon, about ways in which we're supporting American citizens and making information to them available as it relates to this. But beyond that, I don't have any other updates. Again, I will just echo that our hope and expectation is that any political disputes be resolved peacefully and in accordance with the rule of law.
And finally,
Yeah.
I know you just talk about the travel advisory. Can you talk about the personnel and security posture within the U.S. Embassy and with the U.S. military there?
Well, we certainly wouldn't speak to some of those things in detail, just given the safety and security of our facilities and our personnel, but I don't have any changes to announce. Yeah. Go ahead. Yeah.
On that point,
Yeah.
I mean, in terms of how it's very notable that you have put a lot of emphasis on the phrase political disputes. I mean, do you see this as basically a political dispute within South Korea?
It's not for us to characterize, Tom. What we are attempting to do is continue to gather the facts and continue to gather the circumstances of what's happening on the ground, engage appropriately with our counterparts both here in the United States and at Seoul, and then monitor and make appropriate adjustments if needed as it relates to our personnel and our citizens, which again at this point we've not done, but I've outlined a number of ways in which U.S. citizens can engage with us. Beyond that, it's really not for us to I'm not going to speculate or opine on the theory of the case or the reasoning or the decision making here, beyond just saying that it's certainly concerning to us. We're paying very close attention, and that for us, what we want to see is this resolved peacefully, and we want to see it resolved in line with rule of law.
I mean, President Yoon has very much sort of framed this or presented this as a strategic security issue. You know, he's talked about the need to eradicate pro-North Korean forces and protect the constitutional democratic order, but it's sort of notable that in your statements so far you haven't reflected that sort of notion of a strategic threat at all. Does that mean you share that assessment with him?
So look, certainly when it comes to the Korean Peninsula, I'm sure that any number of U.S. officials could spend a lot of time talking about the destabilizing force and presence that the DPRK is, and the long litany of reckless and destabilizing actions that we've seen the DPRK undertake, not just over the course of this administration, but many years beyond that. As it relates to this incident, though, specifically, it's just not for us to draw any kind of conclusion or to particularly link those kinds of things. For us, what we are focused on is assessing the facts, paying close attention to the situation on the ground, making appropriate adjustments if needed as it relates to our consular posture, but beyond that, engaging with our ROK counterparts, and then ultimately wanting to see this be resolved peacefully and in accordance with the rule of law. Yeah, go ahead.
Second Times from South Korea.
Uh-huh.
So under the emergency martial law, if some military action happens, then what is the role of U.S. forces in South Korea?
So, look, as it relates to defense posture and the posture of our personnel, I know my colleague Major General Ryder is going to be briefing later today. I believe I will leave it to them to speak specifically about DoD personnel and our service members in uniform. As it relates to our diplomatic facilities, as I said to Shannon, there's been no change in our posture. We have outlined a number of ways in which American citizens can stay in touch with us, and we'll offer updates through those channels should we need to. But broadly, I will reiterate again that our alliance to the ROK is ironclad, and we continue to be committed to that partnership.